I love horror games as much as I hate them. See, I love the adrenaline rush that comes from getting the shit scared out of me. The counterpoint to this is that I'm a gigantic pussy. Due to this fact, the last time I really delved deeply into the horror game genre was probably the 6th or early 7th generation of consoles. Ironically, I was about 5 or 6 years old when I was playing a lot of these games, so suffice it to say I must have been built differently back then. And since it's been so long, I figure it's about time for me to put down the erotic dating simulators and maybe pick up a couple horror games I haven't played. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about these games I played, and I'm going to rate them on a scale from Legend of Zelda to Legend of Zelda. For all you scaredy cats out there, don't worry, I'm not putting any out of the blue jump scares in this video. I wouldn't do that to you. Layers of Fear, also known as My Bitch Wife Went to the Afterlife and All I Got Was This Lousy Schizophrenia. This game is a psychological horror game about an artist descent into madness, and is almost, but not quite as terrifying as the thought of trying to get a decent paying job with an art degree. The game starts out much the same as every horror game ever made. You enter a spooky house in which you immediately know spooky shit's about to happen. Thunder's booming outside and suddenly creepy shit keeps happening. But overall, this seems like a normal house. That is, until we enter this room and rip the cover off the canvas. Now, the unsubtly scary shit starts happening. We leave the room with the canvas and end up in a hallway that wasn't there before, and this trend continues throughout the entire game. Every door leads to something new. Must have been the wrong door. That's later though. In the beginning, everything is more toned down. The game is drip feeding you horror, trying to mess with your mental. And as the game goes on further and further, things start feeling more disheveled. All of the rooms start becoming more messy and tattered, and the paintings start doing creepy things like melting or flying off the wall or mass-producing fruit. This does not bode well for the fruit stand economy. Soon enough, we come to find out our main objective is to actually collect pieces of our dead wife, and then use those pieces to paint. Every time a piece is found, we return to the canvas and find that the paint on it starts to take the shape of even more creepy-ass artwork. What is that supposed to be? Is that a flamingo? On the topic of dead wives, let's talk about the story a bit, shall we? At the beginning of the game, we as the player know nothing about the player character's backstory or family, but as we collect more pieces of the missus over here, we learn a bit about what has transpired. It really is a love story as old as time. To put it simply, guy marries girl. Girl and guy have child. Guy spends more time with paintings than with girl. Girl burns paintings. Guy beats the absolute shit out of girl. Girl leaves with child. Girl gets burned in a fire and ends up disfigured. Girl and child move back in with guy, who is now an alcoholic. Girl does the razor blade tango. Guy burns the family dog. Child gets taken by child services. Love is a beautiful thing, isn't it? The more we as the player recall information, the more our mental state further delves into madness. Perhaps one could even say that we are peeling back the layers of the main character's mental state. In every layer we pull back, things get scarier, further intensifying our fear. And then, The game is what is known as a walking simulator, meaning the gameplay consists of you moving forward and maybe solving the odd puzzle or two. But unlike other walking simulators like Outlast or Amnesia, you don't really gotta worry about old Grimmy over there coming for you. There are only a handful of times that you can actually die in the game, and they're sort of scripted deaths in the way that they progress the game forward. In fact, there are multiple endings to the game, and to get the best one, you have to die at every possible chance you get. Lucky for me, not wanting to die has never been one of my strong suits. Let me in. Now, you would think that the removal of any actual danger would make the game less scary. It does. Nevertheless, I still think the game was pretty scary, and that could be mostly attributed to the hauntingly beautiful atmosphere and sound design in this game. The game also utilizes the clever horror tactic of keeping you guessing by never letting you know what the hell is going on. It's pretty easy to keep the player on edge when they don't have the faintest clue of what they're looking for or what's looking for them. That being said, most horror games typically have at least one big scary antagonist that you can attribute a handful of the scares to. In this case, the main antagonist is the monster-fied version of the main character's wife, who probably takes the cup for the biggest scary bastard in this game, as well as pretty much the only thing in the game that'll outright hit you with a jump scare. I didn't even look back. It said don't look back, I didn't look back, it still killed me. Also, before I finish talking about this game, I gotta mention the soundtrack. I mean, they were in the studio for this one, cooking up some 18th century bangers. Scare factor, 7 out of 10. Overall rating, 6.5 out of 10. Walking simulators aren't really my favorite type of game due to the fact that holding up doesn't really make for the most entertaining gameplay. But I did enjoy the story and the atmosphere enough for me to overall leave with a positive impression of this game. As for the horror, I just wish the last half was as scary as the first half. That last portion had me feeling a lot of the layers, but not a lot of the fear. Anyways, let's play a real scary game now, shall we? Okay, I'll admit it. I think this one's on me. I think I put the wrong disc in. You know, I don't know how a children's game got in here. We're supposed to be playing horror games. You know, we all make mistakes sometimes.
No, that's the right game.
Oh, this is the right one?
Yes, it's the right one.
This one right here? This is the right one?
Yes, I just said it's the right one.
The one that's currently on the screen right now?
I just told you 3 times it's the right one.
This game right here?
Why are you acting like you didn't just play this game?
No. Quit screwing me, man. This is not Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, also known as Jump Scare Simulator 2021, is a bad game. Moving on. Okay, I guess I'll talk about it. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is the 9th Maiden installment in the Five Nights at Freddy's multiverse, and the first one that takes place in a fully 3D environment that you can explore. I think. Don't quote me on that one, I stopped paying attention to this series after the second one came out. In this one, you play as a boy named Gregory who gets trapped in the Freddy Fazburger Pizza Mall, and now these animatronics want to kill him. But not the Fozzie Bear animatronic. The Fozzie Bear animatronic is a good guy in this one. I'm gonna keep it a buck with y'all here. I know there's a lot of like lore on this series that people care about, but I know absolutely none of it. Like, I've seen a MatPat video here and there, but this shit is way too convoluted for me to care about. I'm sorry, but there's only one slot in my mind for an obnoxiously convoluted video game story, and it's been occupied by Metal Gear since I was a wee lad playing on my PS2. But I didn't play this game because I cared about the lore, or the story, or the characters, or the MatPat videos. I played this game because it marketed itself as a horror game. Imagine the stupid look on my face when I realized I'd been hoodwinked. You know when a game has a specific audio slider for jump scares that you're about to be in for a real treat. This game might be one of the least scary horror games I've ever played. I get more scared playing Minecraft when that creepy sound plays in the cave than I ever got playing this game. Now, all of the frights in this game come from the animatronics that stalk the neon-covered halls of this complex. We got the wolf with an inferiority complex, the bunny that isn't actually an animatronic, just a crazy lady in a suit. We got the one that everybody wants to have sex with. We got the one that I want to have sex with. We got Moon Man, and we got a couple others in there as well, but these are the main ones. The gameplay here has us sneaking around this giant mall that probably smells like feet and stale pizza in order to survive until the clock strikes 6 a.m. when we can finally get out of this shithole. Because for some reason this shit goes into code 2319 lockdown at night. Probably explaining the lore somewhere, I'm not gonna bother. These dickhead animatronics are stalking around the place trying to kill us for some reason, probably also explaining the lore. And their purpose is to jump scare us if they manage to catch us. So the player has to run, hide, and participate in unfun minigames to try and survive. Now there are 2 main things that make this game so unscary to me. The first is that this pizzeria is lit up brighter than a blast from a nuclear explosion. The second is that this game relies too heavily on jump scares without any actual build up to the jump scares. To make jump scares work, you first need to build a sense of unease. You gotta string me along and keep me guessing when the jump scare is coming, if it's even coming at all. The tension in a lot of cases is actually scarier than the actual jump scare. Every jump scare that I got hit with I could see coming from miles away. Now, I already think that over-relying on jump scares is the cheapest form of horror, but if you're gonna do it, at least do it right, man. Jump scares? More like jump I don't fucking care. I will give it up though, there were 2 parts in this game that I thought actually might have been onto something. The first was when Moon Man was stalking you in this dark gymnasium, and you had to go turn on 5 generators like you were playing Dead by Daylight. Although this was probably more frustrating than scary because I swear to God I was stuck looking through this pitch black jungle gym for longer than I should have been. The second part that had potential was when you were making your way through the maintenance halls and being stalked by a bunch of these animatronic skeletons that only move when you aren't looking at them, like a bunch of mechanical weeping angels. Now I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys. I didn't beat this game. I think it was around the point where the game decided to make me play the most boring game of laser tag that I've ever played. And I think the laser tag arena actually crashed my game twice as well, yeah. I think it was about there that I tipped my little conductor hat, said choo choo, all aboard the train to an actual fun game. I'm not playing this shit anymore. Scare factor, 2 out of 10. Overall rating, 2 out of 10. And actually, before we move on, I feel like I need to clear up that thing I said earlier about me wanting to have sex with the alligator animatronic, that was just a joke, guys. I feel like we all know that was a joke, right? You know, I feel like maybe somebody took that one out of context and, you know, actually believed that that's what I actually thought. I mean, it couldn't possibly be. Let's move on to the next game, yeah?
这是什么？为什么都是中文的？我读不懂这种狗屎。冰淇淋，语言设置到底在哪里？
Is this thing working? What? The game booted up in Chinese for some reason. Fatal Frame is a survival horror game that stems all the way back to the PS2 era. It got started when Koei Tecmo, Capcom, and Konami were all sitting at a table together. Capcom got a nice plate of Resident Evil, Konami got the Silent Hill a la carte, and Koei Tecmo saw this and said to the waiter, I'll have what they're having. And here we are. Fatal Frame Maiden of the Blackwater, also known as Man, this game would be really scary if everybody wasn't so damn attractive, is the 5th title in the Fatal Frame series, a series that is deeply rooted in Japanese folklore and urban legends. This game was originally released for the Wii U in 2014, but was later ported to consoles that people actually own. This game takes place on Mount Hikami, better known as the mountain where people were formerly alive make themselves not alive anymore. Yeah, I would have called it you-know-what mountain, but I don't think YouTube likes the S word very much. So yeah, people have been doing themselves in and some creepy supernatural ghost shit has been happening on the mountain. And just like a dog is attracted to a bone, there will always be a horror protagonist attracted to the place that is most likely to kill them. In this game, we get to play as 3 of them. The first is probably the character we spend the most time with, Yuri Kozukata, who originally came to this mountain to jump off a cliff since her family all died in a traffic accident, but she was saved by this girl named Hisoka, and now they live together in this antique store. The second character is Miyu Hinasaki, whose entire purpose of the game is to find her mother who's somewhere on this mountain. And she's also dead. And her parents were actually technically dead before Miyu was even conceived, and you know, it goes into the whole, I'll get into it later. Our third character is named Ren Hojo. He came to this mountain along with his assistant Rui to look for inspiration for his newest book. The main thread that all our characters share is that they have this thing called the 6th sense, so they can see dead people. The story of this game is quite a lot to take in, so I'm gonna try to explain it as fast as possible. It all starts with Miyu Hinasaki, who came to request the help of Hisoka so she could find her mom, but ended up feeling the call of the mountain and got captured and trapped in this box. Ren Hojo is a writer who is plagued by nightmares of this little girl with white hair being sacrificed in some ritual bullshit at Mount Hikami. Looking for inspiration for his newest book, he successfully requests the help of Yuri and Hisoka to get a book about the rituals of the mountain. This starts a whole shitfest, which leads to a bunch of characters disappearing, only to be saved later, and then people start dying, and scary ghosts keep popping up, and Mom, take me home, I don't want to be on the spooky mountain anymore. Eventually, we start to uncover the fact that the mountain was originally a place where shrine maidens would use their power to guide people to a peaceful death. But eventually they would become too emotional to use their power and end up being sacrificed to keep this evil black water stuff at bay. But one day there was this maiden named Ose, who was supposed to be sacrificed, but then she ended up falling in love with this guy named Asao, which caused the ritual to fail. Now, Ose is this creepy ass ghost and the mountain is cursed with this dirty black water shit. Also, we figure out that the white haired girl is named Shiragiku. Apparently, she made a promise with Asao when they were children to be together forever, but then he ended up forgetting about the promise. What a dickhead, am I right? Now, in the present time, Ren is supposedly the reincarnation of Asao, so it's up to him and Yuri to uncurse this cursed mountain by defeating Ose and providing closure to the 2 girls Asao had made a promise to. And Miyu is just still trying to find her mom. I don't think she cares about all that stuff, really. Now, if you want that all poorly summarized in one sentence, the worst customer in the world hires some girls to take a trip to a cursed mountain to gather information about a ritual so he can either marry a 7-year-old dead girl or a decrepit evil ghost. The main gameplay loop here revolves around what I have dubbed as the Ghost Glock. It's a camera, a mystical camera, formerly known as the Camera Obscura, which can be used to exorcise any unfortunate spirit that gets in your way. Each ghost has a health bar, and each picture you take of a ghost deals a certain amount of damage depending on how good the picture was. Speaking of ghosts, we got all manner of creepy apparitions. We got dead schoolgirls, dead office workers, dead children, we got dead shrine maidens, dead shrine maid men, Shit, we even got Yzma from the Emperor's New Groove here. But to be honest, none of them were more horrifying than the tall woman. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of her. She's a pretty popular urban legend in Japan and has been referenced numerous times in other works. The funny part about her being the scariest to me is that she doesn't even fit anywhere in the story. Every ghost you kill has something called a fatal glance so you can see their backstory and how they pertain to the overall story at large. But she doesn't have one. She's the only character with no backstory shown. In fact, fighting her is completely optional. I didn't even know it was possible till I looked it up. She's literally only here to be a dickhead and ends up being the most terrifying ghost in the game. But the most horrifying part about this game isn't the ghosts, it's the Scooby-Doo bullshit setting. Tell me, friend, do you like spooky woods? Maybe you're a fan of creepy, decrepit old buildings. Do you perhaps have a particular inclination to spooky Japanese temples? What about creepy dolls? Maybe you're a big fan of creepy dolls. Well, you can find all of this and more on Mount Hikami. Whoa, what are you doing? There's nothing to see over here. Don't look over there. Look back this way. Come back this way. Mount Hikami. Now, besides the overall dreary feeling of the place you're in, there weren't too many times that the actual apparition scared me besides, you-know-who. Now, I don't know if my brain is broken at this point, but for some reason I didn't find most of these ghosts to be very scary looking. But this is a survival horror game after all, so to be honest, I wasn't expecting to be shitting my pants the whole time. I was more expecting a game with a lot of tense moments. And this game delivers. I felt pinned against the wall the whole time I was playing this. Taking pictures becomes a bit harder when you got dead people trying to eat your face. But it wasn't just during the ghost fights either. Even something as simple as picking something up or opening a door pulls you into this slow motion zoom in that makes you feel like something could jump out at you at any time. It's nothing. Yeah, I knew there was going to be something. There's going to be something eventually. Scare factor I'd probably only give about a 4.5 out of 10. But my overall rating is a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed this game. No surprise there since I've always enjoyed the series. Definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of survival horror. Visage, also known as Please Stop Killing Me, I'm just trying to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do here, is an indie psychological horror game that's largely inspired by, what do you know? PT. Just like how a lot of the horror games of old were trying to capture that magic that Resident Evil had created, a lot of the horror games of new are trying to capture some of that magic PT had created. Anyways, in Visage, you kill your family, and then yourself. Yeah, that's literally the first 3 minutes of the game. I think that's probably the best way to let you know what type of game you're in for here. As for the story of the game, in Visage, you kill your family, and then yourself. That's pretty much it, you're dead. No, I'm only half kidding. You are in fact dead, but you wake up in a house, your house, and you're taken through 3 different stories of 3 different people who at one point lived in this house as well. And after completing those 3 stories, you're confronted with your own past, and you recall a bit more about what led you to the situation that you ultimately ended up in. You know, the one where you killed your family and then yourself. Now when the game begins, you don't know any of this. In fact, you don't even know why you're here. The game just places you in this house and clarifies absolutely nothing. So what do? No, you wander around this empty house that, truth be told, doesn't feel so empty, and start picking up items until you luckily find an item that starts one of the 3 chapters. They could be done in any order, and in my case the first item I found was the crutch. But that was just starting out. Now you're probably thinking, oh, well once you start a chapter, I'm sure the way to go is pretty clear, right? Idiot, you're stupid. You're stupid for thinking that, you're dumb. I spent like 30 minutes dicking around the house, wandering around, interacting with random things, trying to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do from here. At this point, I hadn't even started step 1. You want to see what I had to do from here?
And it's going to be one hell of a sunny day. Get your sunscreen towels out and take your whole family to the beach. Take a day off and show your loved ones how much you care about them on the
Okay, so I mean, when you look back at the clip, it seems like kind of obvious. It's a crutch, you want to sit in a wheelchair. It seems kind of obvious. I'm not stupid. Look, the game even says it's hard. The game gives you a disclaimer. It says it's a difficult game. This shit is obtuse, and there will be times when you solve a puzzle or find an item and you retroactively think to yourself, how the hell was I supposed to know? The game takes the approach of not holding your hand at all, and while I do enjoy that approach, I have to admit, there were some times I looked some things up on the internet. Come on now, calm down. It's not that big of a deal. It's just okay, I mean, that's just uncalled for. Anyways, puzzles aren't the only thing you gotta worry about, because there's also a sanity mechanic in this game. Your sanity will drain if you stay in the dark too long, or if you see some paranormal shit happening. And once your sanity drains all the way, you get a nice visit from whatever ghost happens to be haunting you at that time. You can regain your sanity by either staying in the light, or by throwing back pills like you're a rock star in the 80s. And with the speed at which your sanity goes down, I was dual wielding these pill bottles pretty much the whole game. Now, we've gone on too long without talking about the horror elements of this game. I'll go ahead and give you my thesis statement before I follow up with the explanation. This game is scary. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's something unsettling about being placed in a setting that most people are familiar with, like a house, and then taking away that familiarity. Before anything had even started, I was already on edge, but it wasn't until I made my way to the basement and saw this that it really clicked in my mind that this game was gonna start fucking with me. If you don't see what I see, let me help you out here. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a pipe. I saw a person, and that's just one example of how this game messes with you mentally. Whether it was the lights turning off, the doors closing randomly, the fact that my footsteps sounded like they were coming from behind me the whole game, so it always seemed like something was following me, or whatever the hell this was, the game is always poking and prodding at you. As I said earlier, each chapter is about a different person who lived in the house. Each one of them represents a mental disorder, and each one of them is more scary than the last. The first chapter I started was the Rakan chapter. This is about my main man Rakan, a former rugby player turned crazy paranoid old man. Most of this chapter has you exploring the worst hospital in the world, trying to figure out why he turned into the person that he did. All the while ducking and diving past this crippled form of Rakan. Now, a man in crutches might not seem like the scariest person in the world, but when he's chasing you at the speed of a newborn koala, things can get pretty intense. Go, oh, I'm so dead. I'm so motherfucking dead. Where the fuck am I? Oh, you're gonna kill me. Bitch. Other than him, there's also these faceless monstrosities that also pose a danger to you. To be honest, this is probably the worst chapter, both in terms of gameplay and in terms of scares. Now, the next chapter steps it up, for one, by having an actually terrifying antagonist. Now, Lucy is a girl around the age of 8 who had schizophrenia. We come to find out that her schizophrenia manifests itself in the form of this monstrosity, who had coaxed her into doing all sorts of things like killing her pet parrot or ripping her jaw off her own face, hence the appearance. Now, the mechanic I want to highlight most in this chapter is this camera. This game is dark, not just thematically, but in terms of actual lighting. But the camera though, it has a flash. You might see where I'm going with this. Now, you use this camera to solve some of the puzzles, but you also use this 1-second flash of the camera to navigate yourself around sometimes, which can lead to moments like this. Oh my god! The third chapter I played was Dolores. Now, it might be weird to look at the antagonist of this chapter and then have me say that this is the scariest chapter in the entire game. On paper, a sweet old lady doesn't seem like the scariest horror game villain, but this next clip might change your tune a bit. Oh! Bitch. Why is she posted up like that? Why is she posted up like that, bro?
Something a burglar would not want to see when he breaks into a house. Rob!
Naked grandma!
Oh! Dolores is a paranoid bipolar mother with dementia. In an aggressive fit of dementia-induced paranoia, she ends up killing her husband with 7 knives and follows that up by hanging herself, leaving her own baby to die of starvation. Talk about a bad case of the Mondays, am I right, guys? Okay, a bit of off-color humor there, we'll move on. You know that scene in Insidious where they're all sitting at a table just talking and then suddenly a ghost appears on the screen? Not even like a jump scare type of way, but it's just there, yet it ends up being the scariest part of the entire movie. That's the best way I can describe the Dolores chapter. I mean, of course we got normal jump scares as well, but it's the subtlety of how creepy this old lady is that really sells this as being some of the scariest shit I've ever had the pleasure of playing. The fourth and final chapter is the Dwayne chapter. That's the guy you're playing as. In this chapter, you live out the life of the average person invested in the crypto market right now. That being a life of depression and a lot of alcohol. And I am talking about a lot. You're pounding these shits back. And even if you felt like abstaining, you got this man to peer pressure you in to do it anyways.
Go ahead.
Drink a little of this wonderful poison. It'll do you real good.
It's just like high school all over again. Here, the antagonist is who I've dubbed the Marmite Man. Really, he's just the main character covered in like a black tar. This chapter isn't very scary, more like it's just depressing to play. That being said, it is needed to get the good ending of the game. Alternatively, you can get the bad ending of the game by ignoring all of the chapters and shooting yourself in the head 7 times. I recommend taking this option as it'll save you the mental stress from having to play through the Dolores chapter. Scare factor, 9.5 out of 10. Overall rating, 7.5. This might take the cake for the scariest game I've ever played, to be honest. Unfortunately, I also think that some of the things you need to do to progress in this game are way too obscure, to the point where it ruins the experience some of the time. Anyways, let's move on to the final game I played. Resident Evil Village, also known as Resident Evil 7 2, Transylvania Boogaloo, is the latest in the Resident Evil series and a continuation of the story of Ethan Winters, the protagonist of Resident Evil 7. This game starts out with Ethan in his home with his wife and baby daughter, just spending some wonderful, wholesome family time together.
Mia. Oh, God.
Oh shit, I know that guy. I've seen that guy before. Chris Redfield ends up capturing Ethan and his family for reasons. The car that you were put in ends up crashing, and Ethan makes his way through these dark woods and ends up coming across the village. Title card. This game is about a couple of things, alright? Getting your daughter back, getting your wife back, but most importantly, this game is about inflicting maximum damage to Ethan Winters' hands. I don't know what Capcom has against hands, maybe they played an early copy of Elden Ring before they put this game out, but let me tell you, this shit was just getting out of hand. Anyways, the main point of the game is to actually collect all of the missing pieces of your daughter. I say pieces because she's been separated into different pieces, and only when you gather all of the pieces will you be able to summon Exodia, will you be able to save your baby. This game takes place in this quaint little Romanian village, full of werewolves and other werewolf-like monsters. The village is surrounded by 4 different areas, and each area has a different part of your kid. Now, each of these areas is ruled by a different lord. The Humpback of Notre Dame, 3300 hits on Rule 34, Heisenberg, the Bride of Chucky, and then we have the leader of the fearsome 4, Mother Miranda. But don't worry, not everybody's our enemy, because we're actually guided by our trusty salesman, the average American. Lady Dimitrescu, and her 3 daughters rule over the first area, a giant castle which is seemingly the main attraction in this peaceful village. There are plenty of fun rooms to explore here, like the sex dungeon, or the meat room, or the blood room, all of which have these sword-wielding maniacs prowling around. But you do know the old saying, don't bring a medieval sword to a shooting range. Maybe you don't fancy these guys though, well you can always spend time with the 3 sisters made of actual bugs. Or maybe you could even spend a couple of hours with the lady of the castle herself. You don't have a choice. This is probably the most Resident Evil part of this Resident Evil game. Locked doors, hidden passageways, and puzzles that make you think, why the hell was this shit even built here in the first place? This section wasn't too scary, but it did excel at keeping you on your toes and making you feel like a small bug caught in a very big lady's fly trap. And hey, if that's what you're into, I'm not judging. But maybe castles aren't your thing. Let's take a stop by Donna Benevito's quaint hillside mansion then. I'm sure there aren't any giant baby-like eldritch abominations lurking about. This part of the game diverts from the normal Resident Evil formula of shoot everything that wants to kill you a billion times until it's dead. Instead, we have our guns taken away and we're forced to play a game of hide and seek. First, we must hide from the baby, and once we escape, we must then seek doll. The shift from survival horror to pure horror that comes with losing our weapons probably made this the scariest part in the entire game, to be honest. It's a lot easier to get scared when you don't have a stick that makes all your problems go away. Not to worry though, because if you were missing that subtle ringing of the ears after shooting some freak of nature with a 50 caliber bullet, our next stop is a lake area ruled by Mr. Salvatore Morau. Our stop here is very brief though. Our main goal here is to drain the water in the area so we can kill Mr. Salvatore, who is now a giant fish. And of course we know the age-old saying, don't bring a colossal mutated sea creature to an NRA meet and greet. This part kind of diverts away from the horror and becomes more of an action game, to be honest. But pumping this giant fish full of enough lead to poison a small country was fun enough, so I'm not too bothered. Our next stop on our journey has us in Heisenberg's RoboCop Emporium. The dimly lit halls of this factory are lined with robotified, brain-dead humans that are probably the closest thing we get to a zombie in this game that used to be about zombies. You remember that, guys? You remember when this used to be a series about zombies? Anyways, the real enemy we have to look out for here is actually Pyramid Head's little brother, Aircraft Engine Head. Doesn't roll off the tongue very well, does it? I will admit, every time I came into contact with this guy, I was feeling a bit tense. Something about being minced into a million little pieces doesn't sit right with me. Or maybe it's the fact that this guy has no eyes. I can't tell how this guy sees. It's strangely off-putting to me. We deal with him and hop into a homemade tank with a chainsaw on it in order to take down Heisenberg. Now, Heisenberg's power is like Magneto from X-Men, so picture in your mind right now what a fight would look like with him. Was this what you were imagining? I've got to say, a lot of this game honestly felt like it was two different Resident Evil games. The first half felt more like the classic games, slower and more focused on providing tense moments, but the last half felt more like the newer Resident Evil games bar 7, more fast-paced, played out like an action movie. Speaking of action movies, I haven't even talked about the ending segment of the game, silly me. We take a quick break from playing as Ethan and instead play as heartthrob and classic Resident Evil protagonist Chris Redfield, where we essentially play a game of Call of Duty Zombies, except the zombies are werewolves and the perk machines have been replaced with Chris Redfield's rock-hard pectoral muscles. We eventually swap back to Ethan and take care of the final boss and save the day. The day has been saved. At one point, this was a horror game, mind you. Scare factor, 3 out of 10. Overall rating, 7 out of 10. Overall, I found this to be a pretty enjoyable game. Nowhere near as scary as Resident Evil 7, but for some reason, I'm just gonna let that one slide. So that's it. That's all the horror games I played for this video, and here are the final ratings. Tier list format, yeah, why not? Okay, now here's a tier list of video game characters in order of how trustworthy I think they are. Now here's a tier list of my favorite cereal brands. Okay, that's the end of the video.